News alert, terror in Europe again. We'll begin in France, where the Interior Minister just confirmed the man who drove into a police squad in Paris is dead. One of those cars caught fire. Police say the attacker was from a Paris suburb and had been flagged for extremism. No word of any injuries to bystanders. And in London, another vehicle attack, police calling it an act of terror, targeting Muslims. A van barreled through a group of worshippers outside a mosque, killed one person, wounded several others. A 47-year-old man is in custody under suspicion of attempted murder. Here's a witness.
As we came outside the mosque, there was people screaming. It was like chaos. It was like a horror movie. There was people laying on the floor. There was blood on the floor.
I saw a lot of fatality on the ground, you know. People moaning. I've never heard people scream and moan of that nature. Some wasn't moaning. Some was just on the floor, you know, as though they were dead.
Benjamin Hall from London. Benjamin, this is almost a daily basis now.
The Harris, attack after attack we're seeing over here. 2 in the last 2 weeks, 4 in the last 3 months, and again the use of a vehicle as a weapon. But of course that striking difference that today's attack was aimed at Muslims, and it is being treated as a terrorist attack, and counter-terrorism police will be investigating moving forward. It began just after midnight in North London, an area called Finchley, very diverse neighbourhood, as people were finishing Ramadan prayers, and it seems as if the attacker knew when prayers were going to end and he was waiting. Muslim leaders have called it a hate crime, and they've asked the public to stay calm, avoid creating divisions within the community. But there is tension, certainly. Police have arrested the driver, a 47-year-old man. He was wrestled to the ground by 2 passers-by until the police arrived, and those 2 men are being hailed as heroes. Eyewitnesses have also reported that he said a number of times, "I've done my bit and I want to kill Muslims." Politicians responding today, with Theresa May, the Prime Minister, speaking out.
This was an attack on Muslims near their place of worship. And like all terrorism, in whatever form, it shares the same fundamental goal. It seeks to drive us apart. This morning we have seen a sickening attempt to destroy those freedoms.
And video has also emerged showing the attacker apparently blowing a kiss to passers-by from the back of the police van he was being taken away in. Now, he's been taken to hospital for psychiatric treatment, but when he's released from there, he is going to be charged. And of course, still that tension here on the streets. Many people saying that this could create further divisions. And if anything, this plays into the hands, right into the hands of ISIS, this narrative of driving communities apart. But striking to have an attack, another terror attack here in London, this one aimed at Muslims. Back to you guys.
So sad. They're hitting in places while we're hitting them in Syria and other places too. Boy. Benjamin, thank you very much. And this Fox News alert as well. President Trump is not under investigation. That's according to one of his attorneys. That denial coming just days after a tweet from the president, which appeared to confirm the opposite. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Meghan McCain. She's back! The host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy herself. Beautiful print. Also from FBN, the anchor of the intelligence report, Trish Regan. It never gets old. She's bringing intelligence.
Never gets
Today's
old.
hashtag one lucky guy. Fox News politics editor Chris Steyerwalt. He's outnumbered, and this diet is on fire.
Right here.
Yeah, this is where you live.
This diet is on fire.
I was so excited that I was going to get to be here today because there's so much to talk about, and that I was with human beings who could have a smart conversation about it and put it in the right context. So this is the place to be.
You are welcome.
Yay!
Yay. All right, let's get started. A member of President Trump's legal team says several times over the past weekend, and again this morning, that the president is not under federal investigation. This after a Washington Post report cited unnamed sources claiming the president is being investigated for obstruction of justice. President Trump then tweeted what his attorney says was just a response to that report. Here's attorney Jay Sekulow.
What the president has been accused in the media of doing, or through the leaks in the Washington Post, it doesn't constitute obstruction of justice, so there would be no need to engage in an investigation of something that, if the fact were to be proven, it would not violate the law. According to the Washington Post theory, he's under investigation for taking the action that the Department of Justice told him to take. And so this whole thing, if you look at it in that way and you just lay the case out like that, there's nothing to investigate. None of us have been notified of an investigation.
Congressman Adam Schiff, though, the ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee, suggested, well, otherwise.
I think there is evidence. I can't go into the particulars of our closed investigation, but I also think there's evidence of obstruction. And the fact that the president can fire someone for good cause or can fire someone with no cause doesn't mean that he can fire someone for malicious cause. But I'm not prepared to say that there's proof you could take to a jury, but I can say that there is enough that we ought to be investigating.
I think there is evidence, although many have said there's none. We'll get into that in a moment. All of this sparked by that tweet from the president on Friday, which said, "I am being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt." Chris, I'm wondering, because some Republicans are now coming to criticize the president over to stop with the tweeting.
Yeah.
You're not helping.
Everybody, not everybody, but an overwhelming majority of Americans in poll after poll say the president's tweeting is not a good thing. This is Democrats and Republicans. It's funny. People say the president, or the president himself says, the mainstream media doesn't want me to tweet because they don't want me to talk directly to the people. Quite the opposite. The mainstream media, I love that the president tweets because instead of getting the spin from his spin doctors that is carefully managed to keep them on message, I get whatever the president's thinking at 6:45 in the morning and how does he feel, and it's unfiltered and it comes right from him. So as a journalist, my point of view is tweet it up, but I can see why Republicans and especially people who work for him say tone it down.
So Megan, it might help if the president continuously tweeted, "There is no evidence."
Yes, I mean, listen, granted, I've been offline for a week out of...
Girl went to Greece.
I was with my boyfriend out of the country. It happens once in a while. But
Recognize this fool in Santorini. She's a big star.
This is what I don't understand about this. And again, you know how everyone knows how I feel about the president's tweeting. So he tweeted that he's under investigation. His lawyer's saying, no, he's not, vociferously. We have Kellyanne Conway going on TV today saying that he tweeted this ironically. I don't know if she understands what the definition of ironic means. That seems weird to me.
Exactly.
How I live my life and how I like my politicians, and part of the reason why I do like President Trump's direct approach to politics is that you know where he stands. But when there's too much interpreting, trying to read the tea leaves of exactly what he's saying, not only does it get confusing, but it completely gets us away from the agenda, starting with repeal and replacing of Obamacare. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, these self-inflicted wounds, how at this point have him and his team not learned these lessons? And is this just what life is going to be like? We're not going to accomplish anything because we're going to continue to obsess over sort of for the foreseeable future.
I actually understand where he's coming from with the tweets, because with the number of leaks that are coming out, the number of sources, whether it's within the White House or the intelligence community or the special counsel investigation, if I were being wrongly accused, and that's how the president is framing this, then you would want to respond. Having said that, if that's what he's doing, he has to say, I'm responding to the leaks. He has to say, you know, obviously I'm not under investigation, but if I were, it would be a witch hunt. He has to qualify it somehow. Otherwise it turns into a big distraction, as though he's admitting he's under investigation, and then his personal lawyer goes out there and gets himself in a pickle with a verbal sparring match with Chris Wallace. And now we have to look at what we're doing right now. What are we talking about? We're not talking about how we're going to keep the country safe from the kind of attacks we're seeing in Europe. And we're also not talking about tax reform and health care. Those are, I think, much more critically important to Americans right now.
Eat your Wheaties before you go on Fox News Sunday. That's all I can say. Jay Sekulow, that was tough.
With 2% milk. No skim.
well, Donald Trump seemed to be believing what the Washington Post had written. I mean, and this creates a big problem for him. Not under investigation. Why is he moving forward in a tweet and saying, look, you know, why is he taking this on? He's digging his own grave to a certain extent. Don't even go near it. Just say, look, there's no evidence, or to Kennedy's point, make sure you reference what you're talking about. The problem is you only got, 27 characters? It's hard in Twitter, which is why this is a vehicle that, while yes, it enables you, maybe you need to send a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
which he has in the past.
And just clarify yourself as much as possible.
I have two questions then, piggybacking off what you're saying, because I don't know that sarcasm always translates in 140 characters, especially when you're also trying to talk about the FBI director. So if he extrapolates out with message and takes away the personal attack, he might have enough room to say what he's talking about. But my question is, where are all the people he's hired that are supposed to be watching his tweets? And
where's the war room?
And where's the war room? And I thought, you know, we saw Kasowitz, now we have Sekulow. I mean, we got a bunch of people here.
And high-powered.
Why why is he still able to hijack the message even when it's on tap to help him and get off course?
So you try to explain to your client, you're an attorney, it doesn't matter how good of an attorney you are, you try to explain to your client, look, you're not under investigation for obstruction of justice yet, but you could be. It could end there. Of course it could end there. If they found criminal wrongdoing that the president knew about and he worked to, of course it would be. And he'd get impeached and then he could be charged criminally. Don't get in that space, your lawyer would tell you. Don't put yourself in that position of enormous peril by talking about it, by gassing on about it. But Trump can't resist. The whole story for this presidency so far is that given the massive headwinds it faces in resistance from Democrats, obstructionism even from some Republicans, and a press corps that is absolutely devoted to seeing this be a total blow up, the president just gives them wood to put on this pyre every day.
Add to that the judiciary. Add to that federal judges who have used some of his statements on the campaign trail and from social media against him in their ruling. But, and that is all now legally within the threshold, and we'll see what happens to the Supreme Court. But I don't think it's going to neutralize what these federal judges have said in the foundation they have laid for future presidents, which is a very dangerous precedent.
It's super simple. If I were working in the White House, I'd make a giant poster, Game of Thrones style. Midterms are coming, and they're coming soon. And if you don't get this together pretty soon, you're going to have hell to pay coming up in a lot of these elections. Ossoff is coming soon, and if you don't pass something that we can go to our constituents and say, look, this is why you elected President Trump. He's making America great again. Because right now it's Russia.
So I only see the Twitter highlights of Game of Thrones. Woo! I didn't see the poster.
It's not
but I would say this on that poster. The president actually had a good week last week and the week before in terms of things that were getting done, right? I mean, if we put aside the tragedy that we saw play out on that baseball field practice, and that's hard to do, Republicans are done. Dodd-Frank, we talked about that, the Choice Act. On that big board, can the president put best days in this week and concentrate on tweeting that out? I don't know. It's just an idea. I mean,
you're right.
I live with grade schoolers. That's how we roll.
And that would come in handy perhaps in the White House. He does not trust his team.
No.
And if you don't trust your team, I don't think he does. I think this is the problem. So he's always intervening, trying to get his point of view across, and it's turning problematic.
Yeah. All right. Of course, we cannot set it aside. We pray about it. Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise continuing his recovery, as are the others, in Wednesday's shooting. After last week's horrific shootings played out in Virginia, the House Majority Whip undergoing another surgery. We knew about that. We knew it was coming. What the doctors are saying now. And a showdown is looming over the GOP's health care bill. Senate Democrats are planning a floor protest tonight. Amid reports they may also block routine business in the upper chamber to stop the Obamacare overhaul. Could the move, though, actually help Republicans? We'll talk about it.
The health care battle is heating up. Democrats in the Senate are planning to hold the floor until at least midnight tonight, protesting Republicans' refusal to hold committee hearings on their health care overhaul. This as Democrats are reportedly weighing whether to also block routine business in the Senate. Though some in the party are concerned it could backfire and make Democrats appear obstructionists. But liberal Senator Bernie Sanders says Democrats should do whatever it takes to block the Obamacare overhaul.
I'm going to take that, unless you disagree, as a confirmation that Senate Democrats, you're in favor of Senate Democrats bringing the chamber's business to a halt to pry open.
I am in favor of the American people and members of Congress doing everything that we can to defeat that horrific piece of legislation that will hurt tens and tens of millions of people in our country.
Meantime, Senate Republican leaders are pressing for a vote on the bill by the July 4th recess. All of you are laughing at Bernie Sanders.
Laughing with,
yes.
It's the emphatic. He doesn't pause for a syllable or any nuance to massage every part of every word. He just hammers it home because this bill is horrible and the American people are going to die.
That's almost as good as your Nancy Pelosi impression, almost.
I will combine them later in the show.
So I have to tell you, I can't stand Bernie Sanders, but I just read a poll, Chris, that he is the most popular politician in America. I don't know how it's possible.
That ain't saying a lot. Being the most popular politician in the country that hates politicians ain't saying that.
Fair Fair enough.
That's
It's
true,
like
too.
being the thinnest kid at fat camp. I also agree. But that being said, what do you make of what's going on? We got to get back on track with this.
That's
What do you think about what he's saying? Democrats are really good at fear-mongering, especially when it comes to Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. What do you make of all
And
this?
Republicans were very good at fear-mongering about death panels and stuff like that when Democrats passed it. Democrats are just taking the Republican playbook and feeding it right back to Republicans on this, which is we're not in it. We're going to try to blow you up. We're going to try to stop you. And we're going to tell everybody you're killing people. And I think really one of the problems, if we can bump the discussion out a little bit, one of the reasons that things don't get better is that if the automatic assumption from the beginning is you hate America and you're trying to kill people. I mean, you heard what Bernie Sanders said there. It's not, I think that Republicans have a bad idea about how to improve the healthcare system. Instead, it is you want to take healthcare away from people. You're mean. You're trying to hurt these other people. So when you start at that point, it's not like you're going to find common ground to begin with. So now everybody just cuts right to the chase and says, drop dead.
Now, remember, this is the same party that's cussing at people at the top of their lungs. I mean, this is the Democratic Party thinks it's a good idea to just cuss you out if you don't agree and cuss anybody out if they think they can get some millennials on board, which is quite confusing to me. So that's that party. But with Bernie Sanders, he's just teed it up. If Republicans don't take a swing at that ball, I don't know what it's going to take. Look, they've got the talking points on this. What have Democrats done? Our last president, who was the king of their party, had to executive order to death Obamacare. Upwards of 30 times to try to fix what was broken. We know it's broken. He knew it was broken. They knew it was broken. They've got the talking points. Tee it up. Let's go.
I mean, if they get this through, it will be a good thing for the economy. It will be a good thing for small businesses. It'll be good because it will set the path forward for tax reform, which we desperately need. And it will start to grease the wheels of this economy. So the Democrats may be fearful of that. But I'll tell you this, if they're that worried about repeal and replace being that bad, then they should welcome this. They should say, go for it, Republicans, because that would theoretically help them get themselves back into office, right? Because people are going to be so upset with repeal and replace. They're worried because they actually know repeal and replace will be good for the economy.
So why aren't we hearing that from Republicans? Where is the drumbeat today? I should turn on my Twitter and my phone should have smoke coming out of it.
Yeah, but they're not doing a good on messaging at all.
Why?
But to your point, it's actually, if Obamacare completely implodes, if Republicans can't get it together in the Senate and this thing dies and it doesn't make it to the House in any sort of acceptable shape, then that means we are going, unfortunately, into a single payer system. And I think that's ultimately what Democrats want, especially as the party is being pulled leftward. It's either going to be completely free market or completely single payer. That's what happens if it implodes. And there's so many people who are now invested in the idea that healthcare is a right, that they're going to go the single payer route. And that is a great disservice and injustice for this country.
Damn.
Preach it all day long, Kennedy. All right, we got to move on. We may soon find out if there are any tapes of private conversations between President Trump and fired FBI Director James Comey. The president's lawyer saying he'll likely address the issue in the coming days. What can we expect? Plus, a new push for former Attorney General Loretta Lynch to testify about her actions in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Could this finally put Republicans on offense and Dems on defense?
Fox News alert. Doctors say Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise's health is improving. He is recovering, as you know, from last week's shooting at a baseball field practice in Alexandria, Virginia. Doctors upgrading the House Majority Whip's condition from critical to serious. He underwent another surgery over the weekend. We had anticipated that. We were told in a news conference on Friday that was coming. Doctors say Scalise is more responsive in speaking with his family. And hopes are high that he will be able to make, quote, an excellent recovery. We'll bring you details as we get them.
The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee threatening a subpoena if the White House doesn't respond by its Friday deadline on whether President Trump has tapes of private conversations with fired FBI Director James Comey. Watch this.
Well, I would certainly hope by the date that we set in our bipartisan letter, the White House will respond that, yes, they have tapes. Yes, they will preserve them as we have urged and required. And yes, they'll turn them over. Or that, no, in fact, there are no tapes. It was an idle threat. But one way or another, we need to get an answer. And if we can't get an answer, then I think we will ultimately need to subpoena those potential documents to make sure that we have them.
Stop touching your ear, weirdo. That is the president's attorney, Jay Sekulow, says he believes Mr. Trump will address any alleged tapes in the coming days.
I think the president's going to address that in the week ahead. There was a lot of issues this past week. The president gave a major address in Cuba. We had the assassination attempt of Steve Scalise. There were a lot of intervening factors. Tapes, I think right now was not priority issue number one. The president has a lot of issues, and I think this shows that the president is concentrating on governing. This issue will be addressed in due course, I suspect, next week.
Very good. Allegations that tapes exist stem from a tweet President Trump posted last month. There's the Twitter machine reading, quote, James Comey better hope that there are no, quote unquote, tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. Well, that was after James Comey leaked to the press. So, Chris Stirewalt, is the president going to make good on this implication? Do you believe that there are, in fact...
My gosh, I hope so. I would just love to hear what goes on in that White House on a day-to-day basis. But remember, Comey's actual direction of his friend to leak. There had been leaks from Comey's associates who characterized having talked to him to reporters. The leak from Comey came in response to that tweet. That tweet was what Comey said, what Comey told the Senate Intelligence Committee, said, I didn't know what I was going to do. I saw that tweet. I realized I was going to be basically in a he said with the president, and I needed to get it out. So that's when he instructed his friend to characterize the memos, the notes that he had written for himself after the meeting. So the first thing that tweet precipitated was the movement towards a special counsel, Robert Mueller, whose office is now growing and growing and growing, and they are expanding the scope of their investigation, and they're doing all of this stuff. So I think it was Thucydides who said, never tweet.
I think you're absolutely right. I thought it was Euripides, but I'm glad you clarified that.
So the tapes would then show that James Comey did not do his job.
Yes. The question I still have is, if you're at a dinner and the president's making you uncomfortable and asking you questions that you think are illegal or obstruction of justice, why didn't you immediately alert someone within the FBI? That continues to be the question. What we found out from the James Comey hearings was that President Trump is not under investigation. He said it several times. When you have people like David Brooks, who is the ultimate never Trumper, going on Meet the Press over the weekend and saying it looks less and less likely that there's Russian collusion right now, you're really losing a lot of people. So if any Democrats are taking my advice, which I have said from day one, pick your battles wisely. And if you keep ringing this gong that it looks more and more likely that it's a conspiracy theory and not like it's something that's actually based in reality, and I'm someone who still would like to know if anything happened, but all indications right now are pointing to no. And whether or not these tapes exist, I think anyone who tapes everything that goes on, I know people that do this, I think it's sort of bizarre to record every conversation you've had, but if it does exist, release it. Because if you have nothing to hide and you've done nothing wrong, great. I'd love to hear the tapes as well. I'd love to hear what you're talking about over dinner.
And that's a good point, because perhaps there are other conversations that the president had with James Comey that we are not aware of, and maybe the contents of those conversations would be a little bit gulp-inducing for Mr. Elordi.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you totally. In other words, if there's nothing to hide and you have the tapes, then those could actually help the president quite a bit. So if you got them, you might as well release them. But, it is a slippery slope right now, because the left is so rabid. The media is so much in cahoots with this narrative. They desperately want to take this president down. The idea that Mueller's expanding his team. Well, why aren't they expanding a team to go after the people that are leaking all this stuff to begin with? You have a real problem in the White House, and I don't think it's going to get fixed unless he really steps up to the plate and demands more of the people that are working there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made the point last week that former President Obama really went after leakers. His administration prosecuted them. And if this administration were to do the same thing, we might even see some people we recognize as leakers. What?
Well, maybe there are tapes that exist from President Obama and Loretta Lynch in the Oval Office.
Reality winner.
Well, they want to talk to her.
Yes, they do.
Right?
That's
She's
a real
part
name.
Of having a conversation with Loretta Lynch now is part of this investigation. Remember, there were 6 total investigations going on. Did we pick up any over the weekend? No. But, there's several. So you talk about that headwind for the president. If he does step up and demand more and go get the leaks and the leakers, rather, this could really spin on its head. But it's got to really come from him. He could tweet that.
He could tweet that.
Tweet that.
Hashtag.
Okay. Senate Republicans are reportedly looking to get testimony from former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. They're hoping to get more information on her handling of Hillary Clinton's email server investigation. Fired FBI Director James Comey is reviving that controversy during the testimony of his own, saying Lynch wanted him to call the investigation a, quote, matter. And there's also the issue of Bill Clinton's tarmac meeting with Lynch in the midst of the probe. 3 influential senators, Chuck Grassley, Lindsey Graham, and John Cornyn, are among those considering Lynch as a possible witness. Okay, will we ever get to the bottom of this, or is this another pipe dream?
Well, I mean, in the end, I doubt that either Bill Clinton or Loretta Lynch is going to say, well, actually, now that you mention it, I asked her to prejudice the investigation, and, I regret it enormously. And she's not going to say that either. I think her husband was on the plane, too. I think that she should make him take him wherever he wants to go for dinner for the next week. Keep him happy, and then you got no witnesses that are going to say anything about it. I think it's helpful for Republicans in a political sense to point it out.
Absolutely.
To keep coming back and saying, oh, yeah. Trump tried to prejudice the investigation into his associates. What about this? What about that? And Comey, of course, one of the things that goes to Comey's credit, and one of the I shouldn't call it a trick, one of the methods that Comey has used over the course of his career is he's a pox on both houses guy. The Democrats did this, the Republicans did that. He always
Well, it might be a trick if it only benefits him.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if this turns out to be the most political creature we've ever seen in that position before, and that's what some are saying.
J. Edgar Hoover
right?
did a pretty good job.
He was there for a long time, too.
Right.
But I mean, if you're a pox on both houses, but if it politically benefits you,
and that was,
that somewhat does feel more like a trick.
Can I say 2 things about Loretta Lynch? One, when she had her press conference after that meeting on the tarmac, she said, "Oh boy, do I wish there was an internal lock on that door, and I wish I knew how to use it." Saying basically that Bill Clinton forced himself on her on that plane. Politically.
Hi,
no, you know exactly what I'm saying.
They were having way onto the plane.
Exactly right, Harris Faulkner, and thank you for the clarification. The other thing is, I am excited to see a change of venue. I would like this to go from the Intelligence Committee to the Judiciary Committee, because it's full of lawyers and not necessarily politicians, people who had a craft before they were voted into office. And of course, they are gum-flapping showboaters like the rest of them, but at least they know how to pin a witness down. And I think that is something that has been lacking in some of this congressional testimony that we've seen from Benghazi to Comey.
Hillary Clinton, we know, was under investigation. President Trump, we don't know right now. I mean, we'll get more clarification at some point. But his lawyer's saying he's not under investigation. I mean, this is a woman who was running for president of the United States who absolutely was under investigation. And you got Loretta Lynch saying, let's call it a matter. And then hopping on a plane with Bill Clinton. I mean, none of this looks good. When you think of what the allegations are against President Trump and you compare it to what the allegations are against Loretta Lynch, the Loretta Lynch stuff is not good. So if I'm a Republican right now, I want that story out there. I want to keep hitting that, because that at least speaks to the hypocrisy. They're going after him for something that they don't know exists. She was under investigation.
You know, I'm curious, when the president puts together his war room, are establishment GOP on the bill there? Because I got to tell you, you're going to need all hands on deck. You're going to need a section that's doing that. You're going to need a section over here that's beating the drums on what they're doing well. I'm wondering, do the GOP members have enough cohesion at this point to help this president out, to help themselves to move forward toward the midterm?
So I'd say the broad understanding, the broad belief in Washington is that by the time the Mueller investigation is done, there will be some damage to the president, as he reportedly described it to James Comey, a satellite. If there are any satellites, the president